Hey, this is Johnny Cox. Welcome to part 4 in my series of videos about playing chords on the bass. Now in this video we're going to look at chord extensions or extended harmony. Now in part 3 we looked at triads, which are just simple 3-note chords built in thirds. Now in this video we're going to look at what notes we can add to those chords in order to extend them, to make them bigger chords and to make them sound more interesting. And for me this is where harmony and chords get really interesting. But also the theory gets a little bit more complicated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to race through these examples in the video to show you all what I'm doing and show you the sounds. And if you want to go into it in a bit more depth, check out johnnycoxmusic.com. You'll find all the written examples there and lots of description about why it is that we're using these extensions and how they work. So that'll go into much more detail. But for now, the first extension we want to look at is the 7th, because the 7th is the most common type of extension that you'll find on chords. They're very common. So 7th chords are 4-note chords. It's a triad plus a 7th. So a triad has 3 notes in it and the 7th makes 4 notes. So example 1 is a quick demonstration of how you play lots of different types of 7th chords. So first of all, this is a major 7th chord. And in each of these chords I'm leaving out the 5th because the 5th is not really important. That's also a major 7th chord, 2 different ways to play the same chord. This is a dominant 7th chord. Another way of playing the same chord, so that's called A7. Then we have A minor 7. And another way to play A minor 7, just 2 different voicings for the same chord. Now in the second line of example 1 we're looking at slightly more unusual chords. Those first 3 that we did, the major 7, the dominant 7th and the minor 7th, those are the most common types of 7 chords. Now these other ones are not nearly so common, but they're still really interesting chords, so they're good ones to learn. First of all we have a minor chord with a major 7th. Sounds like this. Okay, slightly different sound. Here's another way of playing the same chord. Okay, then we have a minor 7 with a flat 5. Now this is a diminished triad with a minor 7th on top, also called a half diminished chord. Now a full diminished chord or a diminished 7th chord sounds like that. Now these last 2 examples I have what's called an A7 sus chord. Now a sus chord is where you leave out the 3rd and you usually replace it with a 4th. Okay, so that's an A7 sus chord, and then finally A7 augmented. That's an augmented triad with a minor 7th on top of it. So another really common extension that we can add to major and minor triads is a major 6th. We can add a major 6th to either a major triad or a minor triad. It gives us the chords of A major 6th and A minor 6th. So that's A major 6th. You can also play it like this, same chord. This is A minor 6th, and then you can play that also like this. So in my last video, in part 3, we were harmonizing major scales into triads, and we found that we got 7 chords, 3 major chords, 3 minor chords, and 1 diminished chord. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to harmonize a D major scale into 7th chords. And what we find is we get, again, 7 chords, but this time we get 2 major 7th chords, 1 dominant 7th chord, 3 minor 7th chords, and 1 diminished triad with a minor 7th, which we call a half diminished chord or a minor 7 flat 5. So example 3 is a D major scale harmonized in 7th chords. So you'll find that a pattern emerges. Every time we try and harmonise a major scale into 7th chords, we get the same pattern. Chord 1 is major 7, chord 2 minor 7, chord 3 minor 7, chord 4 major 7, chord 5 dominant 7th, chord 6 minor 7th, chord 7 half diminished minor 7 flat 5, and then you're back to chord 1 again. Okay, so example 4, we're going to add another extension here. We're going to add a ninth. So the ninth goes on top of the 7th. So a ninth chord, a full ninth chord, has 5 notes in it. Root, 3rd, 5th, that's our triad, 7th and ninth. So the first one is A major 9. The second chord is a dominant chord, so it's A9. The third one, A minor 9, and then finally A6 with a ninth. Okay, so a ninth chord has 5 notes in it. Root, 3rd, 5th, 7th and ninth, and that's just stacking notes up in thirds from the root. Now we could carry on that pattern and we'd end up with an 11th and a 13th, and by the time you got up to the 13th you'd have 7 notes in your chord if you were going to play the full chord with all of those intervals of a third. And playing 7 notes at the same time would be effectively the same as playing an entire scale all at the same time, all 7 notes at the same time, and that's rarely going to sound good. So obviously when we're playing this extended harmony we need to be a bit selective about which notes we use and which ones we don't use. So in examples 5 and 6 I'm just going to give you some just very quick examples of some extended chords that I like to use on the bass. And there's just so many possibilities. If you think about how many possibilities you've got with all of those extensions, and then you can alter all of those extensions, you can make them sharp or you can make them flat, and then you can play different inversions of them. You can take the root away, play them in different inversions. So the possibilities really are just massive. So I can't possibly hope to give you a complete list of all of the different chord extensions that we can use. So I'm just going to give you a few examples of chord extensions that sound nice on the bass, and I'll leave you to work out some of the rest for yourself. So in example 5, I'm just playing some alterations and some extensions that I use on a 4-string bass. So for example 6, I'm getting out my 6-string bass. Now you'll have noticed that I do almost all of my demonstrating on 4-string basses because we all have at least 4 strings on our bass. So at least if I show you everything on 4-string bass, it applies to everyone. But one of the things that I love about the 6-string bass is the possibility of playing these chord extensions and the extended harmony. So I really wanted to add in an example at the end which showed some of the voicings I used for extended harmony on a 6-string bass. Apologies if you don't have a 6-string bass, but you'll see that a lot of these can be adapted to a 5-string bass if you have one of those. So here's example 6. First of all, we have an A13 chord. This next one is an A7 chord with a flat 13 this time. Then this next one I think of as A minor 11. Now this next one is another voicing for an A9 chord. Then this one is an A major 7 with a sharp 11. That's a really cool chord, I love that chord. Then this next one I think of as an E7 altered chord. Now people talk about altered scale and altered chords as having a flat 9, a sharp 9, a sharp 11 and a flat 13. Basically lots and lots of alterations. This voicing I'm playing for you here, it's just got a flat 13 and a sharp 9 in it. But obviously we couldn't play all the notes from an altered chord anyway, so I think of this one as being E7 altered. You can also think of it as being E7 with a sharp 9 and a flat 13. So this one's another voicing for a D major 9 chord. And this one's a D minor 9. So again, I have to stress the possibilities are endless. And one thing that's really worth bearing in mind, if you're playing with another bass player, if you're just jamming with one of your friends who's also a bass player, or you just get a chance to play with another bass player, then you can play these chords, but you can leave out the root notes. You can think like a guitar player or a piano player would in their right hand, where you're voicing chords but you're not playing the bass note. Because if you've got another bass player playing with you or someone else playing the bass notes, then you don't need the root notes. And of course that really expands your options in terms of playing the altered harmonies on top as well. So have a think about that one as well if you can get together with someone else and have a jam with them.